Hi, everyone. Thank you for those who've joined. We'll just wait for a few minutes and wait for a few more people to join. So, very good afternoon to everyone. We're delighted to have you here with us for this launch webinar of our flagship offer for our clients, Ipsos Global Trends. Ipsos has been following the trends globally for a decade now, and this is the 10th year of the Ipsos Global Trends release. This year, we have also refreshed the trends to bring in more contemporary attributes while retaining others for continuity. You will hear more details about this in a minute. The theme for this year for the India story is embracing the chaos of a divided India. As we walk you through our narrative, you will see that India emerges, the trends that emerge are how these global trends pan out in India. And our attempt is to give you a look at the method, the robust backbone of the Ipsos theory of change, and use these key emergent themes to talk about India and its citizens and consumers. So let's dive straight in. These are your speakers for today. We have Amit Adarkar, CEO Ipsos in India. We have Krishnendu Datta, who's a group service line lead for innovation, market strategy and understanding, and strategy 3. And me, Pallavi Mathur Lal. I lead marketing and knowledge for India. So I've already given you an overview, and this is how the next 40 minutes or so will go. Those of you who are familiar with the India story from last year, our story on our key cohorts continues this year. So these are the urban masses and the digital Indians. And we tell you how these cohorts are changing. We will end with some implications for brands and marketeers like yourself. Let's begin with a little introduction to Ipsos Global Trends. A little bit of history before we start off. Like we told you, we've been running this global survey for 10 years. In India, we started tracking these trends in 2019. It was 12 trends in 2019, and for the 10th year now, we have refreshed these trends with some contemporary attributes that are showing up. So how did we go about doing this? So trends and foresights experts across Ipsos have analyzed 99 attributes across 50 markets, identifying 6 macro forces, 23 global values, and finally the 9 trends that we will show you. These 9 trends cover a vast variety of topics like health, globalization, geopolitical influences, individual expressions, technology, data security, climate changes, and social issues. And you will see how these are changing over time or not. In 2024, which is the latest update, we are blending our latest data. We bring you local signals and some thought starter provocations for your organization and brands. We hope that you enjoy and find these insights useful. Now, this globally, the 10th anniversary edition is covering 3/4 of the global population and about 90% of the global spending power. The analysis and content, which is built around the world across these 40 markets, is using a trends and foresighting lens. So first, trends and foresighting experts from Strategy 3 and other senior researchers have used what is called the theory of change, about which we will tell you in a minute, to understand how change is and isn't happening. Then, Global Advisor, which is our monthly omnibus globally, which keeps track of what the world thinks, has fielded and coordinated the survey across 50 markets, which is our broadest edition ever. In India, I would like to point out that the fieldwork has been fielded on India Bus, which is our own urban representative omnibus. And so it has been handled by the India team, guided by the Ipsos India researchers, and gives a more holistic and real picture of India. Finally, local and global Ipsos experts across 50 countries have contributed to the analysis and reporting. So now I hand over to Amit to take you through the backbone of our framework and our analysis and how we have arrived at this report for you. Over to you, Amit.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Pallavi, for setting the context in brief. Conducting an exercise involving 50,000 interviews across 50 countries, that was mammoth enough. I think analyzing the data was the next big task. Pallavi, could you move the slide, please? So as Pallavi initially mentioned, we use something called as our own model to analyze change. We call it the theory of change. Let me quickly take you through the components of this particular model. Now you'll see that on the left, there is something called as macro forces. Usually macro forces are there, but they're hidden in plain sight. They're all around us, but somehow we don't tend to notice them, partly because they are really long term. An example, demographics. For the first time in the history, the world is aging quite fast. We're going to hit this milestone in this century where the world population will actually start degrowing. You must have read about China increasing the retirement age last month because China is aging fast. They already have reached a median age of 40. Now, obviously, India is quite a bit far away from that stage. But you know what? Southern states have already started plateauing. Going ahead, 33% of India's population growth will come only from two states, UP and Bihar. In India, urbanization is growing at a very fast pace, and within the next 10 years, we'll actually inch closer to 40% urbanization. Now, you might wonder why these changes are critical because they're long term. But as marketeers, as researchers, we have to start taking cognizance of some of these changes. Another such macro force is climate change. That's something which is affecting all of us. A new entrant to the macro force category is actually generative AI. I don't think any one of us would have heard of ChatGPT 2 years ago because it was launched in 2022 in November. So, within just last 2 years, the world has changed so much and it will continue to change because of Gen AI. So it's critical to look at some of these macro forces. The second box I want to talk about is what we call as shifts. Now, as market research agency, we keep on talking to people all the time. We talk to them as consumers, as customers, as citizens, and sometimes just as people. Now, that cumulative experience of talking to so many people gives us a lot of rich insights. We call them shifts. And that has implication for what's happening in the society, in markets, in categories, and at a very basic human level. The third factor is signals. Signals are very easy. They are the kind of things people post on social media, that they are what influencers are talking about. And you see the signs everywhere around us. Sometimes they come and they go. They are just fashions and fads. Sometimes they tell you a test of things to come. I'll take an example. You would have read that in Europe this summer, a lot of cities imposed tourist tax to discourage tourists. Now, that's an interesting trend. It tells you that some of the countries actually don't want to welcome tourists, though the tourists are getting a lot of valuable foreign exchange and money to that country. The reason could be climate change in case of Venice, or the reason could be plain xenophobia in some of the other cities that I won't mention. But the fact is, when you look at macro forces, shifts, and signals as a whole, you get a good sense of what's changing and how is it changing. So what we did was we looked at all the data we collected through the 50,000 sample, plus some of the social data, and applying the theory of change, we uncovered values, and we had 23 such values. Now, what are these values? Values give an indication of what are those things which will possibly drive change? And those values got combined into 9 trends at a global level. Now, obviously, what I'm showing you right now are the global trends. We'll get into the India data in a little while. But what these trends tell you is that some of these sort of aspects will start shaping our world slowly and certainly over the next few years. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to get into each and every trend because obviously there's a report which will come out which will dig into each and every trend and not only tell you what does this trend tell you about your own business or category, but I just wanted to sort of give you a sense of some of the trends which are coming up. So let's start with globalization fracture, which is the first trend. Now, in a strange way, we expected the world to become hot, flat, and crowded. We thought globalization is the key. But what we see in recent times, and especially that trend has got reinforced this year, is a lot of fracturing within the globalization. I think people are turning a bit more maybe too sort of proud of who they are, their countries, their nations. There are a lot of conflicts. We have a couple of wars going already, big wars. There's always this China versus rest of the world or China versus US kind of vibe, which we see recently. And I did talk about the anti-tourist movements in some of the European countries. What this tells you is that instead of countries coming together, there are more fissures and fractures within countries, which actually leads me to the second trend, which is what we would call as splintered societies. Now, obviously, globalization fractures are more at a country level. But what is interesting is that within countries, within societies, we continue to see increasing amount of splintering. Now, 2024 was a very interesting year. Why? Because we had the maximum number of elections which happened around the world. And usually, electioning, politicking, campaigning leads to a lot of friction. I mean, you've seen the examples, not only in India, but what's happening in the US with the upcoming US elections in November. It tells you the same thing. If you look at politics, there's this re-emergence of right-wing politics. Most of the countries you see tussle between the left or the right and the center. So electioning has led to a lot of polarization. If you look at social media, which tends to amplify the good and the bad in the society, that is further adding fuel to this entire splintering. In fact, if you look at social media, what's also happening is that in elections, we see that social media is seen as more a voice of truth than the mainline media in many countries. So social media, electioning, politicking getting dirty, splintered societies, this all is actually leading to, people taking sides, people liking something, people hating something. Now, you might wonder, why does this make a difference to my life as a marketeer or as a market researcher? Well, let me tell you, it makes a big difference. I mean, imagine you're talking to people and these people represent splintered societies. You put out a message, a communication, a social media post as a brand, and there are people who love it, but there are other people who hate it and they won't forgive you for what you're putting out. And a lot of brands in the past have come under this unintended sort of fallout of good-hearted communication being pushed out. And this trend is going to continue. Let me talk about one more trend which is interesting to me personally, which is this area of conscientious health. After COVID, we do see that people are getting a lot much more conscious about their own health, being cooped up, worrying about your own health. There's a tendency to say that, listen, I need to take care of myself. One of the interesting pieces of work that we see this year is that mental health has overtaken cancer and cardiac health as the top worry for global citizens. Now, that tells you something. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have thought about mental health as actually a disease or a health. You would have thought about, sort of people having serious psychiatric ailments. But now mental health worries people more than cancer and heart diseases globally. So, I just wanted to give you a glimpse of maybe just three trends. I won't get into all the details. And obviously, we will get into the India data much more in specific. So let me now shift track and talk about India. So far, what I've spoken pertains more to global. Now, how does India fare, right? So let's just move on to the next chart. Okay, now let me start with the same 9 trends, but you'll see some colors there. You'll see colors which are indicating that this trend is getting stronger from last year to this year as compared to rest of the world to India. And that color is the one in green, where these three trends are hardening in India. They're becoming more significant and more dominant. You'll see one solo red, which is on climate convergence, where we see a bit of a decline in India, and the rest of the trends seem to be stable. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on these 4 trends where either they are hardening or they are becoming a bit soft or they're becoming of less consequence. So let me start with, let's say, escape to individualism. Now, obviously, India is a young nation, unlike China, which is already aging. India, the median age is still in the between 28 and 29. We are a young nation. We have, as a nation, we've adopted technology in a massive way, especially post-COVID. And we look at technology as a strong enabler. Now, what this means is that with the young, starry-eyed population, which is adopting technology as their big enabler, as their enabler to success, to progress, to getting rich, all of that. And we see this in the IPO rush, which is happening in the country, and stock markets are booming. Now, what this means is that there's a sense that I need to look out for myself. The world in India, there's a lot of opportunity. I have technology as my best friend. It's up to me. And that's why I need to show a lot of autonomy. I need to take charge. I need to work towards enhancing my social status. And I'm curious. I'm curious to learn. I'm curious to do multiple things. So I think there's a strong sense of individualism which is coming in. And we see this reflecting in the millennials, in the Gen Z, in a very strong way. It's a positive trend. It tells you that people are aspiring, they're striving to, be better, do something better, progress in life. That's a positive trend, and that's actually, hardening. That's becoming stronger. At the same time, you also have something that we termed as nouveau nihilism. Now, I know it sounds quite, technical and esoteric, but in a simple way, it means that people are increasingly believing in living in the moment. They are saying, I don't know what future, I don't know what future is going to bring. Nobody else is going to help me. I need to take care of myself and I need to really enjoy. And there's a lot of emphasis on maybe spending on non-discretionary items just beyond the typical, stable kind of goods. There's a tendency towards premiumization. There's a tendency towards experiencing things rather than, just sort of doing the routine kind of stuff. This is again an interesting trend. In a way, it's linked to the trend of individualism. But this is about living in the moment, and that augurs well for a lot of categories which promise premium experiences and mainly experiences. That's a positive trend. At the same time, I want to now focus on the negative trend, a trend which is weakening, which is the climate convergence. And what is interesting is globally, this trend is actually on the rise. A lot of countries around the world, they are getting more concerned about the climate. But in India, interestingly, this trend is actually declined a bit as compared to last year. Now, we had another piece of work we had done last year, which is a segmentation based on people's attitude and the actions that they take towards their climate sensitivity. And what is interesting is that 80% of urban Indians, they actually felt that climate change doesn't concern them. It's something which is concerning others and maybe in future, not now. And at the same time, I'm too busy to actually bother about climate change. And when you look at this decreasing trend of climate conversions and put it in conjunction with the individualistic and the nihilistic kind of trends that we see, it all makes sense. We have a younger nation. We want to sort of strive, want to get richer, want to sort of, launch the next startup and, do a lot of good things. And in that overall scheme of things, climate is something which is parked for tomorrow. It's not for today. It's not my problem. It's somebody else's problem. It is a worrying trend because India is the most populous nation. We are adding a lot to the global growth, and anything we do, good or bad, on the climate part is going to impact the entire world. So I think this is something which is a big worrying trend that we see in India. And the fourth one is also interesting. We called it retreat to the old system. And this obviously is not a trend which affects everybody in urban India. There's a certain segment where the impact is much higher, and we'll talk about that a little later. But this trend essentially tells that, I do miss the simple kind of past. I miss that era when things were simpler. I didn't have to keep on checking my phone and keep on responding all the time. I understand the perils of the technology, but sometimes I wish I can go back. And you do see some interesting sort of things happening around this trend. Now, obviously, as I said, we're not going to talk about all the trends today. There's a report coming out, and you can reach out to us later on, and we'll share you the report and also the implications. Now, before I hand over to my colleague Krishnendu, who will talk about some specifics of what's happening in India and how the cohorts actually break down, I want to leave you with one thought. Now, we when I talked about the global trends, I talked about the fact that the world is getting splintered, societies are getting splintered within the same country. So, to that extent, this tension which comes from things not gelling, things not coming in, we see that happening in India a lot. And there are these chasms, there are these divisions which we see more and more. One example, have a look at this chart. This chart shows the wealth. This is the India data. So the wealth which is concentrated amongst the top, the middle, and the bottom. The top being the top 10% of wealth creators and enjoyers in India, the middle 40%, and the bottom 50%. So what is interesting, and this is the chart which obviously traces the distribution of wealth across these three classes over the last many decades. What you see is that in the recent past, the concentration of wealth amongst the top 10% has gone up like anything. Now, partly it could be the startup ecosystem, partly it could be sort of more people getting more affluent and richer. Now, this is not a worry by itself because typically when countries start their journey towards affluence, I mean, China did this maybe 25 years old. It's the top level which starts getting richer, they start creating opportunities, and then there's a trickle down impact. So right now we are at a stage where India is at that cusp where if everything goes well over the next 5 years, our per capita GDP could actually double. Um, Incomes can go up quite a bit, but there's a but here. That happens only if there's a trickle down effect. And we are at this junction of this sort of starting journey of this chasm. This chasm opens up opportunities for the future, but at the same time, if the trickle down doesn't happen, then it becomes a big problem. Another chasm is the digital haves and digital have nots. And to talk about that, I'm handing over to my colleague Krishnendu, who will take us through the two cohorts which are going to shape the destiny of India in the times to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Amit, and thanks, Pallavi, for setting up the introduction and the context for our signature property, Ipsos Global Trends, and also the context in which the nine trends have shaped up, the global trends have shaped up. And thanks to Amit for setting up a little bit of context for India, which will prove to be kind of relevant as we move towards some details and implications around the India story. Now, in the previous wave, for those of you who have been with us on this journey from the previous wave, there are two clear cohorts which emerge. Now, Amit spoke about the growing chasm between the top 5-10% of the wealthy affluent and the middle 40 and the bottom 50 and so on and so forth. Now, the two cohorts which clearly emerge as important lenses for us, the eyes through which we will look at the India story, are the urban masses on the one hand and the digital Indians on the other. The urban masses are reflective of the larger Indian urban middle class, the aspirants of the society. They are definitely not part of the top 10%, which Amit just spoke about, and they have been more impacted economically by the pandemic. And from what we will see emergent over the next few slides, they don't appear to be seeing any immediate relief in the post period as well. On the other hand, we have the digital Indians. They are probably, they belong to the top 5 to 10% of the affluent class. They're extremely digitally savvy and aware, and they have greater exposure to everything which is happening around in the world. And they definitely have been more exposed to the opportunities which India has created and presented to the population at large. Now, unlike the previous wave, 22-23, where we spoke about some differences and some similarities between the two cohorts, this year we see that there is a little or no convergence kind of between the two. We will first focus on the urban masses, who this year show a fair bit of despair and despondency. Now, right at the beginning, when we look at the same trends and the movement of those trends between the last two waves, which Amit spoke about just a few minutes back, across the total urban India, when we look at them with a lens of urban masses, we definitely see more shifts, more dynamism in the trends. So, a lot of the shifts at the total urban level, the dynamism at the total urban level, is definitely driven by the urban masses. And we also see, trends like splintered societies and climate convergence, conscientious health, etc., much more dynamic among this cohort than among the total urban population that we saw. Now, surprisingly, when you think about this cohort, they have often been considered the moral backbone of India. And they show this time around a steep decline in pride for their country. Now, the boxes on these charts that you will see on this slide and the next few slides are top box scores, strong agreement scores on specific attributes which bring out the flavor of the trends. Now, I feel very proud of my country is the sharpest swing that any of our attributes has shown between the previous wave and this one. And we are seeing signs of discontent, social discontent all around us, which seem to be signals about, this decline in pride for our country. And at the heart of this discontent seems to be the inability to make up for lost opportunities due to unemployment, due to rising prices, and so on and so forth. Now, last wave, when we had spoken about this cohort, we had seen that they were feeling the pressures of, lost opportunities, but we had also seen hope and resilience among them. Now, this year, we don't seem to be seeing that because probably there is been this continuous pressure of inflation and unemployment, which is also incidentally picked up by the trends as the top worries, in among Indian citizens from Ipsos What Worries the World survey, which is a monthly monitor that we have from Ipsos Global Advisor. Now, what we see this happening in terms of impact is that their ability to afford healthcare and other essentials seems to be declining. Now, don't get me wrong, health, like Amit spoke about, is still one of the leading trends among urban Indians. However, among urban masses, we do see within itself a sharp decline, on one of the attributes which bring out this health trend. And when beyond healthcare, when we look at some other categories which whose fortunes are directly impacted by the urban masses cohort, for example, two-wheelers. Two-wheelers are yet to reach, the volume of sales which they had seen pre-pandemic. This is from CM data, industry data. Now, what has also happened, and Amit did speak about the decline in climate convergence, and this is driven to a large extent by urban masses. They seem their worry about climate change and how it impacts their lives seems to be becoming less relevant with more pressing worries in their lives. And within the whole aspect of climate convergence and two-wheelers, what we have also seen is that EV two-wheelers, which had seen a great start with a lot of government discounts and SOPs and so on, has seen a tapering off of sales once some of those benefits were withdrawn. Now, with all this angst and worry, a feeling of nostalgia for simpler, safer, and possibly even more financially secure times has kind of increased among this cohort. Just look at, the kind of increase which some of these attributes have seen. I would like India to be the way it used to be, prefer to have grown up at a time when my parents were children. Very sharp increases, in these attributes. And, we see some signals of brands tapping into this sentiment. There's a brand called Skippy, which has launched Ice Pops. Campa, which is a brand which maybe a lot of us remember very fondly from our childhood, has launched in a more modern avatar. And we also know that this year we have seen people flocking to movie theaters to see reruns of old Bollywood classics. And probably, generations which were not even born at the time when this movie is released, singing along to the hits of yesteryears. So a feeling of nostalgia, of a yearning for the past, clearly emergent here. Now, along with all of this, the focus seems to be more on being able to earn and living their daily lives, right? And this is somewhat leading to a kind of a more relaxed attitude towards gender roles, especially around women. And this is also possibly for women to share more in the financial burden. But when it comes to larger social issues, we probably see a little bit of distancing amongst this cohort. Now, here is an interesting aspect of around this cohort. We've already spoken about the fact that they are possibly feeling a bit let down by the government, by public bodies, and so on and so forth. And so we see an increase in a jump in this attribute, which is around the worry that government or public services in India will possibly not do as much to help their lot going forward. But at the same time, we see a very sharp increase in the faith that is being, sort of given to the business leaders, the corporate leaders of the country. And very interestingly, among the business leaders who enjoy a fair bit of faith and trust among this cohort, there are some age-old names, and there are also some interesting, new faces who make it to this club. And it cuts across industries, new age industries, old age industries, and so on and so forth. And we had pointed this out last time that even among this cohort, I think digital inclusion and digital adoption is something which is increasing at a very sharp rate. And we have seen data in the public domain which suggests that increasingly the increase in digital inclusion in the country is being led by the less affluent and the lower tier citizens living in lower tier town classes of India. So we see a jump, significant jumps again, and I cannot imagine life without the internet in this cohort. And along with that, what has also happened is that e-commerce has penetrated into lower tier town classes. And there is a lot of resonance to the deals and discounts which are offered by e-commerce platforms in these financially strapped times for this cohort. So finally, before we move on to this cohort, to the other cohort of interest for us, what we see is that the urban masses are feeling some pressure, are feeling some despondency. From what we had seen, some resilience and hope last wave, we are seeing a lot more frustration and despondency this time. And what seems to be happening is that the affluent definitely set the aspiration benchmark. But for the urban masses, the climb seems to be quite daunting now. There seems to be a fair bit of disillusionment with the government and public bodies, and a lot of hope as well on the other side from corporate and business leaders. And of course, digital inclusion is an ally for them, and they would like to participate more in this moving forward. Now, we come to the other cohort, which is the more affluent, belonging to the top 5-10%, which Amit spoke about. And when we look at them and take a look at it as a whole, it looks like they seem to be kind of sort of hunkering down. Now, what do we mean when we say hunkering down? In the next few slides, then we'll see that unlike urban masses, a lot of the trends among digital Indians appear to be stable or even getting stronger and reinforced. And it seems to be that, it is a way of protecting what they have. Think of it almost like an exclusive club. Membership becomes more and more difficult to acquire, and inside the domains of that club, the members do like to retain, the markers of exclusivity. So what you start doing is that you start building more markers of this exclusivity, and you become more inward looking, and you dig your heels into that, sort of space. And that is what digital Indians appear to be doing. They appear to be hunkering down. And right at the outset, to bring this to life, we can see that there's a lot more stability among trends among this cohort while when compared to the urban masses. Now, when we had spoken about this cohort the last time, we had said that a lot of the trends around them are being driven by this digital fatigue. When the pandemic had created this hyper connectedness, multi-screen kind of environment where all sort of interaction that you were doing were through those screens. There was a sense of wanting to dial that down, wanting to go for more digital detox, and wanting to participate in more physical, real experiences. Now, that is a trend which has definitely got reinforced. For this cohort, that super dependency on everything digital sees a further plunge. We had also spoken about the trend of nostalgia among this cohort the last time. That still remains fairly high and strong. And we had also spoken about the seeking of more authentic experiences, more real experiences. And also, being willing to pay a premium for experiences and brands which reflect their values. These are all trends which either remain strong and stable or they get further reinforced. But that hunkering down, that digging their heels in, is best exemplified on this slide because digital Indians also show a deepening cultural anxiety and hardening around gender roles and identities. We had spoken about this last time as well, especially around their views towards LGBTQIA, and that seems to be further dropping, further declining. That LGBTQIA should be allowed to live the way they wish, and we do see signals around that as well. For example, the backlash around the OTT program Krishna Mohini. Uh, but at the same time, one of the things which had given us a little bit of different kind of a trend last time was the inclusivity of women. And this seems to have surprisingly also taken a turn this time. And they are talking about more traditional roles for women in society. So there seems to be a hardening around gender roles and identities because of deepening cultural anxiety. And as a result of all of this, it is the women in this cohort who appear to be facing a lot of the challenges. There's a lot of data available, studies which have been done, which do show that women are more stressed than their male counterparts in the workplace, for example. And hence, we can clearly see that women have a much significantly higher need, expressed need, than men to take care of their mental well being. And along with that, they're also leading these trends of around nostalgia and slowing down the pace of life and so on and so forth, because they are the ones who are possibly feeling the pressure a lot more. So basically, what we see is that, continuing from last time, where we had spoken about a deep seated digital fatigue, that trend seems to be continuing. That need for hyper digital connectedness kind of wanes further. Authentic experiences, the ones which reflect one's identity, come to the fore. Health and mental health come up to the top, especially driven by women. And that cultural anxiety, harder positions around, protecting traditional identities are now extending to the role of women as well. But what unites Indians? Amit did speak about conscientious health right at the beginning. The pandemic had made us more conscientious of our health, of our own health and our family's health. And this is a trend which definitely does continue, and it continues to be a unifier among all urban Indians. And uh, while we did say that urban masses seem to be slowing down a bit in terms of taking care of their being able to taking care of their health and so on, but it still remains a very strong trend, and it's probably reflected in a lot of signals around us. The growth of this entire health tech industry, the apps, the devices, the yoga clubs, and so on, which bring this sort of trend to the fore. And mental health, clearly, we did speak about it a little bit. It has clearly become as important as physical health. India is in line with those global trends where we are taking our mental health much more seriously now. And we have also seen that, it is the urban, the metro lifestyles which start impacting mental health of much more. And incidents of mental health disorders are particularly more prevalent in urban settings, and that is something which the trends sort of do bring forth. So before we come to the last chapter of this, what could be some of the implications for businesses and brands to respond to these trends as they are coming out for India? There is no one ring to rule them all, right? So segmentation is going to be key. So possibly messages around authenticity and social responsibility for the digital Indians, and a lot of more hope, empathy, nostalgia, and value for the urban masses. When we think about how to communicate with them, there is an opportunity to premiumize content for the digital Indians around authenticity and social impact, whereas for urban masses, it should be more simpler, more relatable, and possibly more humorous. And there is a lot of opportunity to differentiate product and service. For digital Indians, there is an opportunity to probably go more premium, but these are increasingly going to be very niche and targeted, whether it's in mental and physical wellness products or food and lifestyle related, products and services, or even opportunities around premium and exclusive education. And for urban masses, it is really about creating value, more accessible health packages. When it comes to entertainment, the way they're embracing technology, possibly more bite-sized, nostalgia-linked OTT offers, and ecom has proved to be a great lever. So ecom definitely has a great opportunity to squarely target and fulfill needs within this cohort. Sorry. And we have seen that women are leading the trends for digital Indians. For a lot of our businesses, our communications squarely target women, and it is important to keep this particular trend and its implications in mind while we go about it. There could be an opportunity for customized mental wellness programs and apps, curated travel packages for like minded women, and also greater focus and attention on women employees from the employer's perspective. So this is the last sort of slide that I would like to leave you behind with, and we look at the framework of context, expectations, and empathy, which we look at for brand success from Ipsos's perspective. So when we look at the context itself is different for the two cohorts, right? For urban masses, it is about will I really be able to make it, and for digital Indians, it seems to be more and more around let's not rock the boat really. Expectations from urban masses, definitely greater expectations around ethics, fair play, inclusivity, and so on. Need to use influencers strategically within this segment, establish community dialogues, and so on. Empathy, yes, greater sensitivity for this particular cohort with trust and transparency. And within digital Indians, women definitely need more support and less pressure. And with this, for the final messages, I'll hand it over back to my colleague Pallavi.
Thank you, Krishnendu. So, with this, we will close the peek at the India story for 2024, which is embracing the chaos of divided India. But what's next for all of you? The full India report will be ready soon. The report will be shared with the early bird registrations as we promised earlier. And these are the people here whom you can contact if you have any questions, if on the report or any details you need. And we would definitely like to connect with you for more targeted and curated engagements for your brands through the Ipsos teams that work for you. So we are at the end of this webinar now. Thank you so much for attending. I hope you will share feedback with us, and we all hope to engage with you with these learnings to make your products, brands, and services more successful. So it's a wrap from all of us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye bye.
so much, everyone, for being with us. Thank you.